I was 15 years old during that weekend in June, when my mom decided to skip town and visit her distant family. Nothing unusual about the decision to just up and leave, as she often went to visit the other side, as she called it. She'd either visit her parents, a part of the family I actually enjoy seeing, who occupy a modest cottage up in the hills of some English land, or if she was feeling particularly tolerant, she would go make a trip down to see her annoying yuppie cousins, living it up in their seemingly never-ending Spanish property. That's where she was going this time. I never felt the need to go and listen to their constant loudmouth whining for their quest for importance, but given the choice now, I would have sat through a week of their intolerable rambling if I could have known what that weekend was planned for me. My mom woke me up on Friday morning, and as usual, she'd gotten me the day off at school. I was told that she'd be back on Monday morning, just in time to make sure that I'd gone back to school, and to reassure my teachers that I had nothing more than a 3-day stomach bug. I carried her bags to the car, gave her a kiss on the cheek, waved her goodbye, and just like that, she was gone. I made my way to the kitchen to make my breakfast, all the while thinking how excited I'd gotten the first time my mom had trusted me to stay at home on my own. It was different now. Almost trivial. That first day, I just lazed about. I listened to music, played games, watched a movie, all the usual bored teenager stuff. Then I fell asleep. After what I think was 2 hours of sleep, I was awoken in the evening by a knock. I arose from the couch like a zombie, still sleepy and aching from the awkward position I had somehow let my limbs rest in. I had initially planned to ignore the knock at the door, but the thought of it being a friend made me want to answer it right away. Having company always seemed to make the weekend go faster. So I clenched the door handle with a faint smile on my face and hoped that I didn't look as tired as I felt. With my eyes still half closed and the strange taste in my mouth that I usually get after I sleep, I opened the door. My eyes widened when I realized what I was looking at. A tall, bony-looking old man was standing in my doorway. He was dressed in a black suit and a tie, with an aging bowler hat placed upon his scraggly gray hair. His white shirt, stained with a yellow-brown sort of color that I could only guess was coffee, and his shoes he was wearing were well-kept, very shiny, so much so that I could see my reflection in them. He began to speak. His words were hushed, maybe even a little hissed, in a childlike sort of tone, but I couldn't focus. I knew he was speaking, but I couldn't concentrate on what he was saying. Not while I was looking at his face, staring into his eyes. His complexion was wrinkled and very pale, almost like a hazy shade of silver, but the edges of his eyes were completely black. What looked like smeared charcoal surrounded his vision, and only highlighted the depth of his gaze. There was nothing human about them. They seemed hollow and lifeless. The fear that gripped me when he stared straight through me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. I took a deep breath and finally mumbled a word. "Hello?" I said. He smiled. God, that smile. Oof. It seemed to extend upwards towards his ears as if nothing was stopping it. His mouth was packed with little razor-sharp, dirty yellow teeth, and every once in a while his black tongue would swipe the surface of his upper lip in a slurp. With his head tilted slightly to the left, he crooned softly. "Hello there, child. I'm here to offer you something important. Something that you might need. I'm a salesman, you see, just a salesman. Please, all I need is a moment of your time in exchange for some peace of mind. Are you interested?" I couldn't move. I could hardly breathe. I felt frozen. Terror had encompassed me. I finally muttered a sentence. I can't. I have to go. It's too much, I'm sorry. I slammed the door behind me, and I could breathe again. I could think. I slouched down to the ground, trying to process what I had just witnessed, when out of nowhere, a thud made itself known. I looked up with my mouth ajar, with my eyes darting about, then I slowly stood, making my way to the kitchen. I could hear a gentle humming. It was a happy kind of tune, but the unknown source made me shiver. My stomach dropped as it turned the corner. He was there, humming that tune, smiling that smile. And he sat at my table, just staring at me. I backed away towards the door, when I was welcomed by a shadow. That can't be him. That can't be him. That can't be him, I thought. I began to tear up. I couldn't help it. I headed straight upstairs, past my bedroom, past my mom's room, and vanished into the bathroom. I could hear him. He was singing now, right outside the door. I panicked. I didn't know what else to do. Then it hit me. My only choice. I couldn't believe I was actually contemplating climbing out of the second floor window. But I had to. The shadow passing by through the light on the other side of the door was forcing me to do it. I opened the bathroom window and stared outside, but there he was, standing on the edge of my garden, waving at me, and slowly drifting down the road, taking his song and fading into the distance. That night, I slept in the bathroom, with the door and window locked. I set up a bed using a bunch of towels. I just couldn't bring myself to leave that until daylight emerged. The next day finally arrived, after what seemed to be the longest night of my life, and I had to get out of the house. I went over to stay at my friend Adam's house for the day, and forget about what had happened. It's a strange feeling when you get something so frightening that happens to you, but it seems so unreal that you begin to doubt yourself. It's like you have two minds. I may have had a moment of doubt, but I always knew it was real. And if I didn't after the first meeting with the salesman, it would definitely be forever etched in my mind after the weekend was over. Later that night, I was told that I couldn't stay at Adam's house, as his family had to get up for church in the morning. I begged and I pleaded with him to let me stay, but his stubborn mother wouldn't have any of it, and sent me on my way. I only lived 3 streets from where the house was, so it wasn't much of a walk, but I still had to walk back in the dark of night, and I wasn't looking forward to it at all. That face kept creeping into my mind. The thought of him being in the house yesterday, the fact that someone had been able to scare me out of my own home, and that damn song he kept humming. That song he kept humming. I turned the corner, I could hear it. The tune, the voice. He was here. I looked down the road, expecting it to be empty. Just my mind playing tricks on me, I thought. But there he was, standing under the street light, staring at me and smiling. He began to walk towards me, his hum turning into a song, singing louder and louder as he began to run at me. I had to run. I sprinted to the other direction as fast as I could, and I could hear footsteps behind me. How was he so fast, I thought. I had to get back to Adam's house. I had to. I turned the corner and banged on Adam's door frantically. "Open the door! Open the door!" I shouted. His mother answered, looking terrified, wondering what had happened to me. I stumbled into their house and scurried backwards, only to look outside and realize that he was gone. Was it my imagination? It couldn't have been. But there was nothing there. Nothing. Nothing except for an old bowler hat that was on the ground. Needless to say, she let me stay at that house that night, because, as she put it, I wasn't fit to stay on my own. I woke up the next morning feeling like a mess and looking even worse, but at least the sun was out. I had to get back home. I hadn't been there in a whole day, and I wanted to make sure that everything was okay. I thanked Adam and apologized to his mom. Then I was off on my own. I stood at the front door, took a deep breath, gripped the handle, and that's when I heard a bang, and another bang, and another. I jumped back from the door in pure fear. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it was him again. How was he doing this? But out of nowhere, my mom answered. I'd never been so happy to see her in my life. I hugged her and told her never to leave me on my own again. After that, we went inside and stayed together all day, something we haven't done since I was a young boy, and everything felt safe again. She showed me her new white dress that she had bought and told me all about her visit to her annoying cousins, and she spoke pretty highly of her weekend. But I knew I couldn't do the same. That afternoon, I told her everything that had happened. She listened intently, and I couldn't believe that something so horrible had happened to me. She felt so guilty. She apologized over and over and over again and told me we would go to the police. We would go to the police station the next morning. That's right. But right now, we could wait. We had to get ready for dinner. An hour or so later, we settled down for our meal. I told her all about school, explained to her how much better I'd gotten on my guitar, and she just sat there and listened, smiling as I ate my meal. She stared at me, and I began to feel uneasy. Her smile slowly got bigger and bigger, whilst her new white dress slowly melted into a black suit. She hissed, "Do you see how easy it is to give some of your time?" At that moment, the salesman stood right in front of me. I cried out loud, "I knew it wasn't over! What do you want? Why me? Why my mom?" "You know why I chose you, child. You never listened. I told you it could have been something you might need. I told you that it was important, but you ignored me. You didn't have the time. So I used the one person that you trust, that you listen to. And let's just say that I like to be somebody else, if only for a while." I'm sorry. I'll listen now. It's too late for that. It's far too late. It's a shame, child, because it really could have saved your life. And that was it. It was over. Done. So how am I writing this now? Why am I telling you all of this? Well, you've given me some of your time. So here's your supposed peace of mind. I like to be somebody else, if only for a while.